All right, so I think I know what to do, and it's unfortunately very lame. I think last time we played, I was trying to get underground and the game wasn't letting us, and I think it's because there's a ghost that spawns that we are required to take a picture of. And it seems like a boss encounter, but she won't actually hurt you. So we just need to run back to that room. And this is our run speed. And when we get back there, we can take a picture of the ghost, hopefully. And just make progress, I guess. Since the last time we played, I've beaten Fallen Order, and I have converted my desk into a standing desk, which is way more comfortable. Should be in here. But we might need to take the elevator up and then back down in order to trigger the ghost again. I do know what we're supposed to do after that, but I don't know if it will let us until we take a picture of the ghost. So this is going to be a whole experience, trying to get that sorted out. The fact that the buttons keep switching in the menus is just, I'm never going to get used to it. Spinny. All right. See what we can do here. And are they going to spawn? Doesn't seem like it. So we need to go down here, and apparently there's something in the ground for us to actually interact with that it didn't let us before. So let's just hope we can shine our light into that little hole down here, and maybe we'll be allowed to move forward. Wrong way. It's over here. Oh, Blue's in chat. Hey, Blue, welcome. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we have to interact with this hole. But as you can see, it doesn't let us actually interact with it. So I'm not really sure what the best strategy is. See, and when we leave the room, the camera focuses on the hole as if to say, hey, look, there's a hole there you need to interact with. We can't interact with it, so there's nothing to do. And just to confirm, I don't think we can go through here either. This leads to that chamber that the living aren't supposed to enter. We're gonna have to go all the way to the top. I don't know why it's not letting us do anything. So basically what we're supposed to do is interact with that interactable hole, but for some reason it's not letting us interact with it. And I'm really worried we might be hard locked because we never took a picture of the ghost that was on the first floor. So I'm trying to trigger that ghost into appearing again, but it seems very unlikely that that will even be possible. So as we walked by right here, there was a ghost that kept spawning that seemed like a boss ghost, but nothing, like we didn't have to interact with it at all. All right, we got red spirit stones. I guess that's useful. But our goal right now is to investigate the Haibara Infirmary. All right, and investigate the area underneath it. And there's only one way down, and there's only one fancy hole. So I'm not really sure what exactly we're supposed to do. So let's try over here. Maybe there's a way down. I'm really not sure. This is the waterway room. Offertory box at the bottom of the torii. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna share something really quickly. Where is it? Okay. Here we are. So, this tells us all the things we need to do in this section. It says, as soon as this fatal frame hostile ghost has been dispatched, players should return to room 308, insert the small cog. We did that. Blah, blah, blah. Go through the altar room. Pretty sure we did that. Third floor control room. We did that. When players reach one floor lift lobby, they should exit the lift and quickly run through the door on the left to avoid the ghost that appears. When the color returns, people are safe to re-enter the one-frame lift lobby. Real quick, for everyone watching on the VOD on this, God, I hate these Gamerant fucking articles where they have to maximize SEO. So they're like, when the color returns, fans of Fatal Frame are safe to re-enter. It's like, just say players. Just make a fucking walkthrough. Go to the closet, descend the stairs, photograph the wandering woman, enter the switchboard room. You'll find a hole in the floor. They should interact with it to obtain the iron key. Did we get that already? Because I don't think that we did. Because I don't see an iron key in our inventory. I see a copper key. There does not seem to be anything in the room for us to interact with. So I guess we have to go back there and try to get this iron key, but it's not spawning for some reason. So let's try to troubleshoot this if we can. So maybe we just have to be really good about shining our flashlight in here. This is the worst mechanic of all time. I think this is the part where my pretense of enjoying this game is going to actually fade completely. I've been dreading going back to this because I have not enjoyed it in the slightest. All right. This is the worst Fatal Frame game so far, I think. All right. Anyone see a key in here? Because I sure as fuck don't. Because I'm not seeing any iron key anything. There's nothing over here. We're shining our light on that. And there's absolutely nothing over here. We picked up everything there. Alright, let's try to maybe go somewhere else. Let's just keep exploring. Yeah, the Fatal Frame games in general are pretty B tier, but like even at their worst moments they were playable. And this one has been an experience, a very frustrating experience the entire time. So just kind of a bummer that that's the case. I'm wondering if there's anything. I wonder if things change at all. Like if things change on hard mode, because I'm playing on hard mode, right? Are you kidding me? Okay. It's gonna show me the hole, and I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. All right, we gotta go in the hole. Ben asks, what are some things that the devs could have done to make the games more enjoyable? First things first, make the character fucking walk speed not... This is my run. This is my sprint. This is abysmal. No person should play this, especially when half the rooms in the game are empty. I mean, I think the big thing is don't require really obnoxious A to B pathing, where it's like don't gate interactions, right? Like the biggest issue that I've been having with these games is that like I'll solve a puzzle before it's meant to be solved, and instead of just letting me move forward, it just doesn't let me find the item. It's like, oh, you can't find that yet because you haven't interacted with the thingy. And it's like, fuck that. It's so obnoxious. just make the thingy there. I think the other big thing is everything in this game is just 1,000 times more tedious than it needs to be. Shining a light over, an item to reveal it, except for items that magically don't need to be revealed for some reason, like this iron key just now. That's obnoxious. Why isn't the design consistent there? Why haven't they just consistently designed how items interact and work? Couldn't tell ya. Because I think the lore and the ideas are kind of fun and interesting. The thing with Fatal Frame is that I think a lot of people did think it was going to be this next pioneer, because Fatal Frame 2 at the time of release was just unlike anything else that had ever come out, and it really did scare a lot of people during the J-horror boom of the mid-2000s. But even without it scaring, it's just it's one of the more well-designed Fatal Frame games, and it was one of the more well-designed survival horror games of the time, which is not really saying much. But oh my god, just as the series progressed, I mean, Fatal Frame 3 I think is the best in the series. I think it's the most interesting of them all, the most free and open, the one that has the most interesting ideas. But as a series, Fatal Frame 4 so far has really lost the thread and doubled down on all of the stuff that just makes these games miserable to play. And I think on top of that, Fatal Frame 5, by the time we get to it, they're dealing with dwindling budgets on niche consoles with a very strange priorities that just led to these games not being as good as they could be. Ben brings up Silent Hill. Silent Hill is kind of an interesting example because Team Silent worked on 4 of them, and they were all pretty worth playing, I would say. I'm not the biggest fan of Silent Hill 4, but it is at least a functional video game for the most part. The thing that kind of happened with that is that Konami politically was not a very stable developer. They were trying to expand, and even today, to this day, video games are not Konami's main thing. They're primarily a rights holder for other stuff. They have gacha games that they work on, pachinko and lottery games that they do in casinos. They're like a multimedia conglomerate rather than just video games. So video games being offloaded to how do I say it? Western developers, makes sense why they would do that, but it's just the priorities at the time, especially in that era, were so different than they did now that I think, I don't think the blame of Silent Hill going bad is quite the same as the blame needed to explain why Fatal Frame doesn't ever get there. Because even the worst Silent Hill games, they have design ideas that function. They're just overall not very good. Whereas I think the Fatal Frame games don't have a very cohesive design ideology. Especially when it comes to these ghosts, right? Every single ghost cut type is handled exactly the same in this game. And for a game where you're meant to be scared by the ghosts and deal with them individually in camera, and you have to deal with these complex encounters where there are 5 of them at once, your strategy never changes. Nothing is different about how you interact with enemies here in a game that is primarily tediously interacting with enemies. And that's kind of a bummer. The puzzles are all pretty much the same as well. I mean, in Fatal Frame 1, just as an example, oh god, instant kill attack I just need to run around for. The first Fatal Frame just has repeated puzzles. It's the same puzzle repeated 4 times, which is just not a very compelling loop in a game that is already so tedious. Narik is here. Hey Narik, welcome. There we go. So I think Fatal Frame 4 here is just completely loses the thread. And it's not even because it's not scary. It's just that it goes, okay, what are the good things about Fatal Frame? And instead of being like spooky environment, interesting lore, like a unique design sensibility, it's like, no, it's slowly walking around, having a few jump scares, and tediously fighting enemies in annoying combat encounters for multiple minutes at a time while you just wait for them to die. And that's just not the stuff that made the early Fatal Frame games like an interesting or promising thing. And it's kind of sad too, because this game is in a lot of ways, you know, like kind of just interesting historically speaking, because this game is a Suda51 game, obviously, and it has these references to Moonlight Syndrome, which is similarly a really terrible game, but one with a lot of really interesting ideas, just executed really poorly. And this could have been a chance for them to kind of revisit and pay homage to Suda's past, and they didn't. Instead, it's just like a really bad motion control waggle Wii game that has a kind of janky port and doesn't hold up to the test of time, which is a real bummer. I really gotta say, I don't think that this game is very impressive at all. You just wait. Game plays itself a little bit. There you go. 2-hit kill. 35,000 points right there. And this is kind of what I mean too, right? Like, here's a good example of what I would consider to be over design, bad design. Currently, there's an issue in Fatal Frame. They want you to be in combat encounters, but it's really hard to design ghosts that are both easy to target and counter attack, while also designing ghosts that mostly just shamble around. So their solution to that is like allow ghosts to go into walls, allow ghosts to have like really violent attack windows where they're swinging all around. But they realize that this is a problem from a playability perspective. So instead of, you know, designing more agile player movement and more interesting ghost movement, they give you a lock-on that just allows you to not have to aim. Why? Why would you do that? Why don't you just design better encounters? Why map an entire button and lose a button to map just for that? It's extraordinarily distressing that that was their solution, especially in a game that was originally a Wii game where you had access to like motion controls to point at things. It's so amateur in that regard. There's a clear lack of interest in actual game design going on here, and that's just kind of a bummer. I mean, I think that Ben says ghosts are not a very interesting enemy in games and movies. I think you can have interesting ghosts. Like, I don't think the fact that they're ghosts makes them uninteresting. I think it's just you need to actually design encounters that have real interactions and are meaningful, and they just don't do that in this game at all. The ghosts are not scary, not because they don't like, because the idea of ghosts isn't scary, or because they don't jump out at you or something. They're just not scary because they never pose an actual threat. And they don't mean anything. We're in a place that happens to also have ghosts that we sometimes need to kill, and usually have more resources to deal with than they have to deal with us. All right, we need to get to the bottom floor, which means we have to use the elevator. We're probably going to need to go outside into the well. But before we do that, let's examine these rooms. That's locked, okay. Not a room to examine. This is the manifesto episode where I detail my feelings about this particular game. It's just a shame. And we're going to definitely play Maiden of Dark Water. And everything I've heard about that game is that game is dog shit. So... When you die for the 10th time in the same spot, it loses all spookiness. Yeah, I mean, I think that applies to every game, but I also think, especially in this game, it's very easy to see through encounters and see through the design of like what's going on, and like ghosts stop being like, you know, we see like a scary ghost that's like a Shinto priest that's gonna like kill you with a hammer, but then you realize like what he actually is just a floating target that like waggles back and forth horizontally for 2 seconds and then teleports behind you and hits you, and there you go. Now you know him because you know his entire gimmick, and there's just nothing you can do from there to make that a more interesting interaction for the player. Ben says, look at Kuon, another mediocre horror game. Yeah, Kuon's a great example. Kuon is also a game where you are almost never actually threatened because you have things like the ability to heal and save anywhere, I believe. It's been a while since I've played Kuon, but it's a game where there's absolutely no risk of anything. Nothing particularly interesting happens. The narrative's kind of cool, and the ideas are cool, and the imagery is kind of cool. It has like a sort of eternal darkness attempt to kind of freak you out at places where the game will play tricks on the player. But like that novelty wears off when there is absolutely nothing blocking you from seeing exactly where and when the game is going to do these things, and allowing you to completely avoid the like horror of that at any given moment. Oh, we're in the surgery room with the hair. Do we just have to follow to where Choshiro was? Hexo says, Fatal Frame 5 does have a cool mechanic for item interaction, but its execution is so limp that it's more hilarious than it is scary. I'm very curious how it works in the like PC port. We'll probably play Fatal Frame 5 on PC, by the way. Just because I am losing my mind playing this game on controller when I could possibly have mouse control. But geez, I'm trying to think, where the fuck do we go? But if it's a mechanic, I think it is, where you have to like reach out and grab things. This game has this, and I can't stand it. I cannot stand how this game makes you reach out to grab items. I wish you could just pick things up. Ben says, Eternal Darkness was a genuinely scary experience because the GameCube could mess with you. I mean, the cool thing about Eternal Darkness is basically any system could do that. It just happened to be published by Nintendo for some reason, which is fascinating. The history of Silicon Knights and how that game ended up coming out on the GameCube and everything surrounding that is really fascinating. I highly suggest people watching look into that. Hex says, yeah, it's that one. Yeah, I mean, that's in this game. And the way they adapted is you just hold out a button. This is so annoying. Can I just go in here? Does the lift work? It does. But it's kind of shocking that we never got, you know, an Eternal Darkness 2. I mean, there were attempts at it, like Shadow of the Eternals, I think, was the game they tried to kickstart that like ended up failing or whatever. And there's like a whole bunch of reasons why like Dennis Dyack and Silicon Knights in general are kind of dubious why they can't get a game made nowadays, from what I understand. But yeah, just that's a lot of. It's a lot of lost history, I think, now. I doubt we'll get another Eternal Darkness game or anything by that team successfully released. But hey, I mean, if we do, that'd be interesting. What are some better PS2 era horror games? I mean, the classics are classics for a reason. Silent Hill 2 is probably the best game on this like horror game on the system. Silent Hill 3 is great. Siren 1 and 2 are fantastic. I've never finished Siren 2, but what else is there? I mean, if you like action, horror, mythology stuff, Otogi and Otogi 2 are kind of cool. Those are FromSoft games for the Xbox. Those are interesting. Okay, so we can't go through here. We got to figure out where to get stuff. Obscure titles. The thing is that most of these obscure titles just weren't good. They just sucked. Like, that's the issue. Horror, let's see, horror RPGs that were good. Digital Devil Saga, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. They're not really scary, but they've got cool aesthetics, and great narratives, at least in terms of DDS. DDS is a really great narrative. What else really was there? There just really wasn't a lot on the system that really stood up in terms of like horror. Michigan Report from Hell is terrible. Also a Suda51 game, but very interesting. Terrible in a really interesting way. I really would need to think. I mean, because the big thing that happened on the PS2, late PS2, early 360 / PS3, were when like Japanese game development and especially Japanese horror games were struggling to adapt, so to speak, to modern development cycles. So I really don't know if there's many. What was the Clive Barker game from the 90s? Are you thinking of The Undying? Is that it? There was also Clive Barker's Folklore wasn't it. What the heck was it called? The PS3 one that he did? That was interesting. The PS2 The Thing game was, if not good, very, very intriguing. Not really sure what to do. Let's see. What do we need? Let's upgrade our camera, that's for sure. We only have 7 stones. Sure, we'll upgrade film loading time. I really don't want to upgrade this. I don't really care about the other lenses right now. Oh, Clive Barker's Jericho. That was the 360 era one. You are correct. I keep saying 360 era. I know the console generations. My brain trying to play Fatal Frame, all right? Yes, this is the area we need to be in. It doesn't seem like there's anything here. I already took a picture of the Suzuki doll with the other guy. So it seems like you don't have to repeat the dolls, which is good. What else was there? Dark Watch was a great horror themed FPS. It was not particularly scary, but it was intriguing and I liked it. I mean, there were plenty of like B tier horror titles on the PS2. I don't know if I would really, like, if we're looking for genuinely good games versus like interesting ideas of what could have been, there's a pretty big differential between those two things that kind of prevents stuff from coming to memory. Obscure 1 and 2, yeah. Definitely. I'm not a huge fan of, what the fuck was it called? The prison horror game, not Silent Hill in a prison. Main character, what was it named? The Tormented or something like that. And then it had a sequel. The sequel's subtitle was Ties That Bind. The Suffering. That's what it was. Yeah, The Suffering. Ooh, Type 90 film. Very nice. Didn't really like The Suffering, but it exists. Manhunt, of course. Rockstar's Manhunt. The thing is that a lot of these games just weren't super great. There we go. PC games from the time, though, we had lots of cool horror games on PC. Manhunt wasn't really horror. I mean, it was literally a murder sim game where you were trying to escape from people trying to kill you in like a, it was like absolutely horror. It was like a horror movie. It was a slasher film. But then there's like some of the best horror games of all time from that era. Stuff like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, but that's locked to PC. That's a PC game. Which I definitely want to play on the channel sometime because it's one of my favorite games ever made. And I've played it too many times. I don't think that something needs to be scary necessarily to be horror. It's not like a survival horror game, but I would say it's a horror game. It's as horror as The Suffering, if we're making delineations between something being an action game and a scary game. I would say The Suffering is probably even more of an action game than like Manhunt or something like that.